morning and welcome to 62 Who Knew, live tonight on WeBeam TV from the beautiful Christopher Schaefer studio in Baltimore, Maryland. My name is Stephen Sless, in tonight for my buddy and regular host, Michael Banner. If you're a loyal viewer, welcome back. We are so grateful for your continued viewership and support. If you're new to the show, thanks so much for being here. We hope you enjoy and come back to join us live every week at 5 p.m. on WeBeam TV, Facebook, YouTube, and other internet media platforms. We have a big show planned, so sit back and relax for the fastest hour on the internet. First, as tradition on this show, a brief synopsis of 62 Who Knew. 62 Who Knew is a show dedicated to serving the baby boomer audience, their loved ones, and trusted advisors. Viewers of 62 Who Knew tune in to become educated and empowered on such topics such as long-term care planning, retirement income strategies, reverse mortgages, Medicare, and a wide array of other topics designed to put you in the best possible position to maintain or better your lifestyle. Today, those nearing retirement or those already retirement face a unique set of challenges. How we plan to fund our longevity is very different today than in decades past. Historically, many companies provided lifetime pensions, which provided retirees with certainty and peace of mind. Today, there are no shortages of risks and other issues that have left many Americans worried about outliving their money. Week after week, this show delivers on its promise to serve as the premier source for all things those 62 plus should and need to know. Loyal viewers no longer ask, who knew? Instead, they are better prepared to tackle retirement head-on with financial security and peace of mind. Tonight's topic is near and dear to the hearts of many of our viewers. We're discussing long-term and extended care planning and why it's not the sick person who needs a long-term care plan. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services reports that an estimated 10,000 people per day are turning 65, and this trend will continue until the year 2030. 7 out of 10 of these people will require some level of long-term care in their lifetime. And without proper measures in place ahead of time, paying for care could wipe out savings and wreak havoc on caregivers and loved ones. Tonight, we have 2 amazing guests to help you, a loved one, or your client to better navigate long-term and extended care planning. First, please welcome Cathy Sikorski. Cathy is a lawyer, speaker, and nationally recognized author of books such as Showering with Nana and Who Moved My Teeth? Cathy has a new book released on October 1st, which I'm super excited to hear more about during tonight's show. And I'm also excited to welcome Leonard Raskin, certified financial planner and owner of Raskin Global. Leonard is also a contributor for several media outlets. Both Cathy and Leonard are strategic partners of the Stephen J. Sless Group. A big welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Great to be with you, Stephen. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So glad to have you on board. A huge show planned for tonight. We're talking long-term and extended care planning, a hot topic of late, particularly given, of course, COVID-19. So I'm going to start off with a question for both of you. You're both in the long-term care arena. You both work with a senior demographic. How has COVID, let's start with you, Cathy, how has COVID changed the way people look at long-term care?
I think the biggest thing that I recognized is that it's now a part of the conversation. Whereas before, clients didn't want to talk about it. It didn't seem that important as long as I got my legal documents in order and I was prepared for death and I was prepared for retirement. Sickness, maybe yes, maybe no. But if COVID brought anything to the forefront, it brought to the forefront that sickness can be a dramatic problem and have a dramatic impact on not only you, but your entire family. And so that requires us to do some real long-term care planning. And I'm happy, certainly not happy for COVID, don't get me wrong, but I am happy that we are now having the conversations because these are long past due and they're really critical for so many people in your family. They really are.
For us, I think one of the things that's been significant for our clients and something that they hadn't talked about much before. And we've held family meetings, generation one, dad, mom, generation two, the kids that are going to be taking care of them. One of the things that has come up that in these conversations has always existed, but now more than ever, is if there's going to be facility care. Boy, it has been a whole new thing to decide where mom or dad will end up, what kind of visitation you may have. What's going to be the situation if, as COVID struck, you can't visit mom and dad, and things need to be taken care of? Who's going to get the mail? Where are the bills going to go? Are things going to the nursing home, the assisted living facility, and that power of attorney is just not being accepted? So again, having the legal documents, super important, but making sure that the details are handled and somebody knows who's going to act, how they're going to act, and getting in to see the people. You know, it's become a whole new thing that, am I going to be able to see mom and dad if something happens? It's something we've never encountered before.
I think that really segues, Leonard, into who really needs a long-term care plan. And of course, we always think it's the sick person, right? We need to create maybe a funnel of income. We need to create resources to pay for care. But what you just reminded everyone is even just picking up the mail or taking care of the bills, all of that takes time. That might take someone out of their job. I'm sure you know that 2 million women literally quit their jobs or had to leave their jobs during COVID because of caregiving issues. And that can be from, babies up through elder care. The point being that long-term care issues have now come to the forefront in that it's the caregiver who is having a huge impact on everyone, and somebody better be watching out for them.
Yeah, absolutely. The financial strain of not just the infirm, potentially parent, but of the caregiving children, the stress, the strain, the financial draw on them, as you said, not being able to work because you got to take care of mom or dad or a spouse is enormous. And we make sure that people understand that if one person's sick, the family is impacted, not just the sick person.
You both made a great point by bringing up the caretakers. How can caregivers talk to their employers about continuing to work from home post-COVID-19? Hopefully we get out of a COVID-19 world, assuming we do, and assuming we do soon. There's a lot of folks that are caring for loved ones right now, and they got to go back to work. And a lot of their organizations may be trying to get the workforce back to working in person. What is your advice for talking to employers to continue to work from home to be able to support care needs?
I love this question so much because I think we're in a new world. A lot of employers found that their employees did in fact continue to be productive and indeed super productive during COVID while they were at home, while they were working from home. And many a company will tell you that they did not lose profits or work productivity during this period of time. And I want them to recognize that flexibility had a huge, huge impact on them in a very positive way, right? Employees stayed because they had this flexible life schedule that they could balance their work and their life. And the women that they maybe did lose because of COVID, because of the inability to do this caregiving as well as working. I mean, hopefully kids are going to go back to school, and hopefully members of the sandwich generation can say, all right, my kids are taken care of, but now I need to continue that flexibility so that my mom or my dad or my sibling can be taken care of. And so to recognize, number one, that we made this work already, to recognize, number two, that you as an employer already have things in place, FMLA, leave, shared jobs, things like that were already in place. And maybe even three, to recognize that you can put into place things like a you have a diversity and inclusion group? Why don't you have a caregiving group? Things that you can do as an employer to help your employee be retained instead of retrained.
Absolutely.
And I would add, as long as the employer is able to, as Cathy just said, recognize continued productivity, recognize that the employee can do the job and doesn't have to be at the physical location of the company 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for more people to have flex time, to have the ability to take care of mom or dad or a spouse or whoever it may be, and hold the job. There are surely occupations where that's not possible, where a company can't just have people working from home. And we've seen that. Mom and pop shops, restaurants, the like. There are certain employers and employees where it just doesn't work. But where it does, I think she's right on point. Companies have found productivity gains, and as a result are comfortable saying to the employees, you don't have to be here all the time as long as the work gets done. I think that's good for the employee, it's good for the employers, it's good for the bottom line. So where it works, I think it's a great opportunity to continue what we've seen. And so there you get the COVID blessing in disguise, if you will.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Had you asked me prior to COVID, and I'll preface it with this, we've always been an in-person work environment, and that's been important for training, it's been important for camaraderie. Had you asked me a year and a half, 2 years ago, could we be successful if we all moved to a remote work environment? I would have laughed in your face, but the proof has been in the pudding. We have been more productive and more profitable than ever before. And a big part of that is because of the freedom and flexibility we've been able to provide our employees, many of which are caregivers. I want to pivot a little bit. I want to get into long-term care, insurance, and financial solutions. But before we go there, Cathy, let's just talk about the conversation first of care, right? We know that 70% of folks are going to need some level of long-term or extended care in their lifetime. And it's likely that a family member is going to be the one that provides that care, whether it be providing the financial means for care or actually physically being the caregiver. Let's start here. How should a family or loved ones even approach the conversation of long-term care?
This is so hilarious because I don't even think I told you what my new book is. And the title of the book is 12 Conversations, How to Talk to Almost Anyone About Long-Term Care. And each chapter is dedicated to talking to your mother, your father, your adult siblings, your spouse, your doctor, your lawyer, your financial advisor, and approaching this topic with each one of those important people in your life, okay? The fact that you brought it up just really underscores the fact that this is where people think it's difficult. And yes, I can give you some tips in my book and whatever to do that, but I would like to just say it's not as hard as you think. You've got to just start. You've got to say, this is something that's important. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect me. And let's just talk about what you want. What do you think you want if you get sick? What do you think we should do if you get sick? Do you want to be at home? Do you want to go to a nursing home? Do you feel like that would burden us, your children, if we keep you at home and take care of you? We need to really understand what you want. And then we need to figure out how we're going to pay for it. That, of course, is the basic conversation, but it has a lot of shark-infested waters, doesn't it, with the way we deal with people and what we think might be important to one person is not important to the other. But just starting is so critical. I can't stress that enough. And I really think Leonard would agree. And the reason I think that is because I'm so excited that he had family meetings, which I think is brilliant and amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, I think the conversation is the conversation. It's got to happen. It's got to happen sooner. And here's the thing. I don't know. The memory starts to go. Obviously, it's harder and harder to remember what you said at some point. But it is important to start having these conversations much younger than when you think you would need care. We've had couples over the past 30 years in business. We think in long-term care circumstances that this is the 70, 80, 90-year-old parent. It could be the 40-year-old spouse that just had a stroke and isn't going to recover, the 55, 60-year-old that is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and early onset can be a very long and devastating family disease. And so these conversations should start early. We talk about death and dying. We talk about what you want your funeral arrangements to be. We talk about powers of attorney. We talk about medical directives if you're in that persistent vegetative state, end stage condition. What kind of life support do you want? But often the conversations that are missed are the ones that Cathy just mentioned. You know, mom and dad, what do you want if something happens? And some people say, I never want to leave my house. And other people have to recognize that I never want to leave my house is what all of us would want, given perfect circumstance, but we may not be able to live that way. And so the conversations with the kids, the grandkids, the siblings, again, all in the room, talking about realistically what could happen, and then enough people in the room at the right time so that later we don't have a he said, she said about what we agreed. If 3 of the kids are all in the room and mom and dad said, you know, we're comfortable if we have to be in a facility to be in a facility, it's a whole lot better when all 3 kids know that was discussed than just one. And the other 2 say, mom and dad would have never wanted that. And the one says, well, they told me that it was okay. Well, if all 3 are there and all 3 remember, then, you know, 3 working with the parents makes it a better conversation in the future. So that has to happen sooner rather than later. And then you have to involve all of the appropriate people in that meeting.
And Cathy, you being an attorney, what's your advice for having that conversation and then being able to document that conversation? To Leonard's point, it's important to have all the decision makers in the room, but we all know how conversations go and people interpret conversations however they want to interpret conversations. What documentation should and needs to be put in place to ensure that the one receiving care is having their needs met once they are either in a facility or receiving long-term care?
So, and I'm sure Leonard does this too, just based on this conversation that we're having right now, but any good attorney, especially in elder and estate law, is going to memorialize the conversation with notes, with correspondence with the family, etc. But of course, you have to have those documents in place. You have to have the financial power of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney. These documents, and I like to remind people, these documents are for live people who are sick. POAs, powers of attorney, are for live people. Wills are for dead people. Wills are what you put into place when you decide what you want to happen to your things when you die, right? So they memorialize 2 different conversations. What do I want to happen? Who is in charge when I'm sick? What do I want to happen? Who is in charge when I die? They're very, very different conversations. And so those documents themselves will memorialize some of those ideas, especially a living will, which is about if someone is in a permanent vegetative state, are you basically a pull the plug or not pull the plug family? What are you and what have you decided? And I also encourage people to understand nothing is written in stone. Things change all the time. Laws change, people change, you know, people get divorced in your family. You might not want them helping you out or being in charge anymore. These things have to be living, breathing documents that can change as you change. But if you get it started and you make some decisions, you're going to be going down the right road. But we started this conversation, I don't want to take over too much, but we started this conversation about who needs this, who are not the sick people. There are many people my age, you know, and I don't want to tell you what my age is, but I'll tell you that there's many people my age who are baby boomers who still have minor children, right? And minor children are often forgotten in this scenario. What happens, as Leonard just said, if you at 40 or 50 either have a diagnosis or a crisis event like a stroke, and all of a sudden you can't take care of your family, your minor children financially? We all know that the spouse is sort of a first thought, but what about those minor children? What about those kids you were saving for college? What happens to all that money? Is that money going to go up in smoke because it's going to be deemed money for nursing home care? You've got to pay attention to the fact that you might be an older parent with children who still need your funds. They are not going to be your caregivers. They're people who need money from you, income from you, a plan from you. And I think that often sort of gets lost in the translation. And I sort of wanted to bring that up because that's not about the sick person. That's about who you care about and who you love as the sick person. So I threw that in there.
Let's pivot to talking about funding and solutions for funding care. So It's no secret on this show. This show has been an advocate and a proponent for long-term care insurance. I run a reverse mortgage company. My company has been on the forefront of bringing together the long-term care industry and the reverse mortgage industry and aligning us into one forward-thinking body who can help folks fund long-term care, particularly funding the long-term care insurance piece. Leonard, chat with me about long-term care insurance in particular. Who should consider a long-term care insurance policy? What are the pros and the cons? And then we'll get into some of the other funding mechanisms.
Yeah, so boy, we don't have enough time in the hour to cover that subject all by itself, but I'll give you the high-end highlights for sure. It depends on wealth. You know, there's basically three tiers of people in our economy, in our country. Let's break it down quickly and easily. The first are the ultra rich, the second are the lower, poorer, and then the other is the vast middle. So if you're super rich and you've got enough money to fund any care you could ever need, then you get a financial decision and you're in the best position. You can either decide that your assets are going to cover long-term care or that you want to shove off that risk on an insurance company and then you insure it. You either buy standalone long-term care insurance or a hybrid life insurance / long-term care insurance model policy that will pay if you get sick, and if you don't need it, ultimately pays money back to your family at your death. So that's for the super rich. Now, if you're super poor, quote unquote, it's a terrible thing to say, but we have state benefits, we have Medicaid benefits across the country. We have state government plans that if you don't have wealth, will pay for that care. But most of the baby boomers, most of the people listening probably, are not the super poor and they're not the super rich. They're in the vast middle. And the vast middle has to prepare for this cost. It's going to come up. You're going to have some expenditure in this area. Potentially, you need to qualify how you're going to pay for that. And there are a number of ways to do it. Certainly one is to look into the insurance industry for long-term care insurance. There are basically two types of policies. To keep it super simple again, one type of policy first is the type that if you get sick, they pay. So this is akin to health insurance, car insurance, disability insurance. You pay a premium to the insurance company year over year. They take your money, they put it in reserve. If you get sick, they promise to pay X amount per month, per day, per year, and that money comes to you to pay for the care. So that's very simple. The downside is you don't use it, you lose it. So money spent is money gone, and if care isn't necessary, the money's lost. The second type of policy, and more prevalent today than ever before, is what's called hybrid long-term care policies. These are policies where you set aside a block of your assets, you chunk money to the insurance company, and you say, if I get sick, same thing, pay me back money monthly, daily, annually for my care. And if I need that money, you pay me. If I don't need the care, then when I pass, give my family back the money that I deposited with the insurance company for the policy, and maybe some small amount of interest on top of that. So those are the two basic types of long-term care insurance. So again, that's for the vast middle, and that's if you've not done necessarily other planning in your lifetime. So it becomes a question of, on a macro basis, what's going on in your financial situation? But the two basic things to know are, you're going to need to spend money on that care potentially. And if you do you have enough wealth to do it? Or is insurance going to step in and play the part to pay for that care? And then if insurance is the model, there are two basic types: the reimbursement or indemnity, where I pay and I get if I'm sick, and the hybrid life long-term care model, where I put away capital. If I need it, it gets spent. If I don't need it, it gets refunded to my family. That's pretty much the industry as it sits today from an insurance perspective to pay for care.
And that was one of the best and most crystal clear explanations of long-term care insurance that I've heard in a long time. I have a follow-up for you, Leonard, and then Cathy,
Sure.
I'm coming back to you.
Sure.
So insurance maybe is an option, maybe is not, depending on wealth. We got that. Let's say somebody is going to self-fund care. They determine that the insurance policy, for better or for worse, just isn't for them. Leonard, can you walk us through the implications of self-funding care, particularly when it comes to sequence of return risk? And then please do the viewing audience a favor and just briefly explain what sequence of return risk even is. It's a topic that's been brought up on this show a lot. It's a term that's thrown around a lot. I think we speak about it all the time, so of course we understand what it is. I want to make sure that the general viewing audience understands sequence of return risk, and I also want them to understand the implications of using their assets to cover the cost of long-term care.
Got it. So let's start with sequence of returns risk, and we can make this real easy using just a couple numbers. I don't like to draw this out into 10-year studies. We can do it in a quick 3-year survey, for instance. Let's say that over the 3 years, you just retired, you don't need care, but we're just talking 3 years of retirement, and you're going to spend money to live, to pay for care, whatever it is, out of your asset pot, your wealth that you've accumulated during your working lifetime. And so I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. 1, 2, and 3 each have an average annual rate of return, mathematic, on the assets of 10%. So this would be a good 3 years. We average 10% a year on our account. And we're going to start our account holder with $100,000. Doesn't matter how much you need to live or whatever else. We're just going to start with $100,000. And let's say that client number 1 has $100,000, average 10% a year return, need to spend $10,000 a year to live. So they got 10%, 10%, 10%. They started with 100, they earned 10, spent 10, earned 10, spent 10, earned 10, spent 10. At the end of 3 years, $100,000 in the account, spent 10 grand a year, very happy client. Client number 2, sequence of returns risk, retired with $100,000. First year, 0 return, spent $10,000, left with $90,000. Second year, 20% return. On 90, that's $18,000. They have $108,000. 20% in that year means that they're up to 108. They spend 10, they're back to 98. And then they had a negative 10. And that negative 10 takes them down to 100, and now they're at 90,000 after they spend their money. Okay, fine. Now let's go to client 3. Client 3, now remember that 20, 0, 10 is 30 over 3 years, so they had an average return of 10% financially, but they ended up with a different number. But let's go to client 3. Client 3 retires. They need 10,000 to live. They have 100,000 to start. First year, negative 20. Negative 20%. They're down to $80,000. They need 10 to live. They're down to 70. The next year, 0 return. On their 70, they spent 10. They're down to 60. The next year, they get a 10% return. They're up to 66. They needed 10 to live. They're down to $56,000. That's an average 10% a year return. In that case, no, sorry. We're gonna give them 30. We're gonna give them 30 in the last year. We're gonna take them way up. But the bottom line, as you can see, I can do the math, is they end up with significantly less wealth because the returns, negative returns in the early years of the sequence, cannibalize the asset return and cause the account to drop dramatically. Which then, when you're drawing money from, and if you're using an account to self-fund care, that drop in the beginning is precipitous and significant that you can't make it up with returns over the long term because you're drawing down as the account is dropping in value, and it's kind of like a drain. The account just spirals down out, and before you know it, over any length of time, your money runs out dramatically quicker than it would have had you had a flat rate of return or early up returns followed by later negative returns. So sequence of return risk is punitive in retirement. It's not dreadful during the accumulation phase because you're just letting money sit, grow, average. But when you're in a withdrawal phase, it will destroy the account over time. And if you're trying to self-fund care, Stephen, back to what you asked about, relative to this, and you get a bad year or two and you're drawing against the account, you can very soon find yourself way out of money. Or if only one spouse is sick and the other spouse is living on the assets, significantly less assets to provide for the non-infirmed, and wiping out assets by self-insuring. Self-insurance is a very expensive insurance policy to not buy.
That was great stuff. So we know folks are going to need long-term care. We know the risks associated with self-funding care. We also know, and I know this, and you both know this, but the audience may not know this, that for most folks, 60 plus, the largest portion of their net worth lies within their home equity. In fact, a new study from the National Reverse Mortgage Lender Association just came out last week that folks 62 plus, homeowners in particular, 62 plus, have amassed over $9 trillion in untapped home equity, housing wealth. So I think it's important for the viewing audience to understand how to leverage what is in most cases their largest asset, their home equity, and repurpose that home equity to perhaps come up with a strategy, a better strategy for funding long-term care. So I want to talk about reverse mortgages and just the concept of housing wealth. But Cathy, before we go there, you've been in this arena for a long time. I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about the topic of reverse mortgages. It's a product that has changed drastically over the years, but I want to get your input as an attorney and a caregiver and a fiduciary of somebody that looks after folks that are planning for care. Tell me your thoughts, to you, how has the climate around reverse mortgages, how has that conversation with your clients changed over the years from when the loan was more of a last resort to now when we are working together to help folks leverage their asset in a very strategic manner to pay for care needs?
I love this question because I think that reverse mortgages, like every other option, as even Leonard was talking about, is a tool in your toolbox, right? And I think that people were so quick to discard the concept of tools in our toolbox. I'm not going to do annuities. I'm not going to do reverse mortgages. And to be fair, you guys had a tough road to hoe. You had a really difficult reputation to overcome about how to use these tools in the toolbox. But what I am finding is that the more refined investment and financial advisors become about the long-term care cost, about what it's really going to cost people when somebody gets sick. And when I say cost people, I mean, as Leonard mentioned, but maybe people didn't hear so loud and clear, is the healthy spouse. What's it going to cost him or her? The child, the minor child, what's it going to cost him or her? Your legacy, what's going to happen to that if you haven't put a plan in place that includes looking at all the possible tools in your toolbox? And that includes reverse mortgages, hybrid plans, a typical long-term care policy. That includes a lot more things than we were willing to look at before. And that's why I'm glad that people like you, Stephen, have come to the place where people are willing to listen and see how this can work with their plan, depending on what they want.
It's been interesting, Cathy, listening to you, it brought up the memory of when I first got into the reverse mortgage industry almost 15 years ago now. It was the kids, the grown adult children, who said, well, no, my parents don't need a reverse mortgage. We're going to take care of them. We're going to finance their care, and we're going to provide the funds necessary. In a way, it was them thinking that if their parents did a reverse mortgage, that means less of an inheritance for them. Nowadays, we get more calls from the adult children than from the actual end consumer, that senior looking to take out a reverse mortgage. And it's because I think, look, the long-term care industry is making strides. We're getting education out there. I do feel the reverse industry and the long-term care industry are aligning. I like to think that we have a lot to do with that. There's a lot more work to be done there. But the overall misconception that if my parents take out a reverse mortgage, that means I wind up with less. It's actually contrary to that point. You actually will wind up with more because the burden of care is not going to be on you as the caregiver. And in all reality, the reverse mortgage is, like Cathy said, another tool in the toolbox, and it can be structured very strategically in a way to help fund care while preserving the equity in the home. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole about reverse mortgages. Michael and I have talked about reverse mortgages ad nauseum on this show. It's something that him and I are very passionate in. Let's go back to you, Leonard. Let's just talk about the overall strategy of using buffer assets, whether it's housing wealth, whether it's a separate account that is specifically to fund long-term care. If somebody doesn't want to go the route of insurance, walk me through the other options, right? How else do we fund care? We spoke about the sequence of return risk. Talk to me not only about the sequence of return risk, but also the inflation risk and the taxation risk, and how can a client hedge against these risks while ensuring that they're covered for care?
Great questions. I want to piggyback on what you were just talking about, though, for just a second, to express that for the estate, usually, if we think about growth of real estate and values in growth of real estate, other than like right now and a couple times historically where we've had these huge run-ups in real estate values, the long-term return on real estate is about 1% to 2%. It's not enormous. So the reason people's houses become worth so much more than what they bought them for is that they live there a long time. It's not that they went up in value so much, it's that they live there a long time. And so we see 80, 90-year-olds with housing wealth because they bought the house when they were 40. They've been there 40 years, and the compounded increase 2% becomes a big number. But to your point, exactly, the point I really want to make is a reverse mortgage allowing people to pull the asset debt equity from the home to pay for care or whatever else life may demand, when often these same people have mutual funds, ETFs, stock holdings. It's highly likely, if managed professionally and diversified well, that over the retirement or long-term care lifetime of the senior, that there's going to be much greater growth of the equity assets than that of the equity in the home. So you have two choices there. If you say, I don't want my parents to have a reverse mortgage, I'd rather spend their investment money. What you have to realize is you may be spending 6, 8, 10% appreciating assets for 2%, holding on to 2% assets. That's just foolish financially. Doesn't make sense. So we have to look at it from that standpoint, first and foremost. And then as you asked, well, what if somebody doesn't want or chooses not to go the long-term care route? As you said, buffer assets are critical. What is a buffer asset? It's an asset that in this marketplace or any marketplace doesn't lose value. So we saw in the last now 18 months, dramatic shifts in the stock market. We had the onset of COVID-19 last January, February. Nobody knew what this was. Nobody knew what it was going to do. But I can tell you this, between January the 1st and March the 23rd, 2020, the S&P 500 lost almost 50% of its value. If you had money in stocks at that point, and we talk about sequence of return risk, if you were paying $10,000 a month, and believe me when I tell you $10,000 a month is not an unreasonable number for a nursing home or a long-term care facility or assisted living at the high end, depending upon where you live. I'll do a quick aside. One of the great places our viewers can go is Genworth Financial. They produce a study every year. They've done it for years now that shows the cost of care on a daily, monthly, annual basis, whether you are at home with care, nursing home in the nursing care in the house, assisted living facility, private room nursing home, for any zip code you want to put in across these great United States. So you can look at that and see $10,000 a month is not an unreasonable number for care. And if you're spending 10 grand a month last year, January, February, fine, March, your account loses 50% of the value and you're blowing 10 grand a month out of there, you're never going to recover. So what you have to have is another pot of money, and that pot of money's got to be either a bank account, a guaranteed annuity, a life insurance cash value pot, or money in your home that is negatively correlated, that has nothing to do with what the stock market's doing, so that in those months, weeks, months, years potentially, when the stock market is going down, you can pull your necessary cash flow from some other account so that your values don't drop and you don't blow out your wealth. And then when the market recovers, which it always does, always has, I can't say always will, but just about we can say over the long term, always will. Markets go up and down, but they ultimately, the next 100% is always up. And what I say to clients all the time, If the next 100% is down, you don't really care what your portfolio's doing. We're all in a heck of a lot worse shape than worry about what our accounts are worth. But that other asset, while the market recovers, has got to be there for you to pull money from to cover those costs, whatever they are, whether it's kids' education, whether it's your long-term care, whether it's your retirement without long-term care. You need to have something to be able to pull from in a time when the market is going against you, not with you. And in that case, boy, a reverse mortgage, having that line of credit reverse mortgage, where what you've done is you've secured the right to gain access to the equity in your home at a signature on a check with no one's permission, without any market risk, without regard to your health. I don't know, other than that and the cash value of life insurance, sitting on the sidelines, anything better that you could possibly own to cover that what if at that moment.
As far as a buffer asset goes, one point I want to drive home as well, a reverse mortgage, again, and I don't want to seem self-serving running a reverse mortgage company, but I'm going to because it just makes sense. A reverse mortgage line of credit not only does all those things that Leonard just so eloquently detailed, what it also does is it allows you to lock in today's home value. Values are through the roof, and in all likelihood, we are going to see, whether it's next month, next year, 5 years down the road, it's likely we're going to see some sort of housing correction. Call it a bubble bursting, call it what you want. It's very unlikely that values continue to rise at the clip they are now, and it's actually more likely that they level off or even go down a hair. And if they do, you can take out a reverse mortgage today and lock in today's value. So you can take out a line of credit. If your home is worth $500,000, you're taking out a line of credit based on $500,000. And if next year your home value is $400,000, your line of credit is still based on the $500,000. And guess what? These are non-recourse loans. We've talked about that again a lot on this show. That means that no debt can ever be left to your heirs or to your estate that they actually have to come out of pocket and pay. Non-recourse means that no responsibility is passed to your heirs or your estate. It's an incredible buffer asset. We started off the show talking about COVID. We have about 13, 14 minutes left. I want to go back to COVID for a second. A question for both of you. Educate me. There's a lot of folks that have had COVID-19. I don't know what the number is, but millions and millions of Americans have gone through COVID-19. Many have died, and that's extremely unfortunate and very, very sad. A lot have survived. For those who have survived, can they even qualify? Can they get through underwriting? And can they purchase a long-term care insurance policy? Or does this segment of the population now have to seek other alternatives? And let's start with Leonard. Let's come back to you, and then let's go to Cathy on that.
It's a great question. You know, the underwriting world is changing and never had to deal with this. So it is a unique, new virus, as well we know from what it is and how it's been running through our population for the last now year and a half or so. And while I've not seen any insurance company decline based on a positive prior COVID diagnosis, I can assure you that the insurance companies at large are looking at this right now and making decisions about that. And I think what will trigger most of that decision is what we call long-term COVID, long-run COVID. That is, what are the lingering effects of having had the virus to the body, and what does that do? So what we're seeing now is we're starting to see, because it's only been, let's face it, a year and a half, we're starting to see some people that a year out after they had it are still having breathing problems, they're having memory problems, they're having heart issues. So it's very likely that in the underwriting world that is insurance, because let's face it, back to basics, what is insurance? Insurance, from the consumer standpoint, is a sharing of risk by pulling multiple individuals' assets into a pool of dollars and then getting back a benefit if I qualify under the terms of a contract. From the insurance company, what is insurance? It's bringing in massive dollars of premium, evaluating the risk, and hopefully paying out very, very, very few claims. Insurance companies are not in the business of paying claims, and they don't generally insure people that are looking to receive benefits. So insurance companies want to bring in premium and pay little bits of claims. Insureds want to pay little bits of premium and buffer against big claims. And I can assure you, the audience, that the insurance companies industry right now are trying to figure out what is their morbidity experience of a COVID patient. And when somebody's positive for COVID, what does that mean in the long term, and whether or not long-term care is going to be available to them? And I can tell you I'll wrap up with this thought. In the last year, I've been in business 35 years. And in the last year, I've had more people reach out to me to consider disability insurance, long-term care insurance, and life insurance to buy it because they were concerned that they might get COVID and might die or might get sick and not be able to provide for their families, more than any time in my 35 years that people have reached out and said, I want insurance. So I would say if you're considering it or haven't considered it, it would be a good time to step up to the plate and make sure you, your spouse, your children, your parents, your family are protected, because we don't know whether this is going to change the underwriting landscape. And if it does, and you've had it, it may very well be too late. So better to have been protected than not. You know, you take the umbrella when you think it might rain. It's a little too late when you're outside in the storm.
It's a great analogy. Cathy, over to you. I have a two-part question. The hot topic, if you turn on any news station these days, is, of course, the COVID-19 vaccinations. A lot of people feel a lot of different ways about vaccines. Without getting into the politics of it all, I want to talk to you wearing your lawyer hat. Do you see a point where insurance providers mandate that you have to have a COVID vaccine in order to qualify for a policy? Answer that, and then I'll come back with my other part.
I mean, honestly, who knows? It's anybody's game, but, you know, there's a lot. Insurance providers, just like Leonard said, are in the business of trying to not pay claims. That's their job. But here's the thing I want people to understand about this very question. Yes, they may put that on the table. If you want long-term care insurance, you have to prove that you've taken a COVID vaccine. They can do anything they want. They're private companies, right? But here's the deal. Long-term care issues have been around for years and years and years. We've had Alzheimer's for a long time. We've had dementia for even longer than that before Alzheimer's had a name. We've had lots of healthcare issues. We are living longer, period. We just are. And so because COVID brought it to the forefront and COVID could make it harder to get these kinds of policies or this kind of insurance, all I want to say to you is, look at it now, because even if you don't have COVID, you didn't get COVID, it surely means to me, you're still going to have a long-term care event, whether it's you personally or someone in your family and you become a caregiver. And now you have to step out of the workforce. You have to give up assets or income because you're caring for someone else. This is not a thing that came with COVID, right? This is a thing that you need to pay attention to now, regardless of whether COVID is on the table or not. You should be looking at it because long-term care issues are coming for everyone.
Yeah, I think the moral of tonight's show is be proactive. Leonard, speak to this. We're running short on time, and I want to give both of you the opportunity to promote yourselves, promote your company. Cathy, I want to know more about your book. I have one last question for you, Leonard. Tell the audience who may think that they can't work with a financial advisor because they need to meet a certain level of wealth or have a certain amount of assets accumulated. It's such a misconception. Can you just talk to the viewing audience about who should have a financial planner?
Somebody that has money. Now, I will say, the industry that I reside in has somehow proven itself very often to be the snobbery industry. And if you find that the person you're talking to or interviewing to become your advisor says, we don't take people that don't have $500,000 or $1 million or $250,000, then I would say most likely that person is not a financial advisor, but rather an investment advisor. And their sole focus is to gather your assets, invest those assets, and be paid a fee on those assets. And so that's the wrong type of person to go to. what you want to go to is a holistic advisor, somebody who looks at the full of your financial situation and gives you a diagnostic based on the information that you provide them, and then tells you what it is that you should be doing in the different aspects and areas of your wealth, to include investment, but also to include budgeting, estate planning, insurance planning, the long-term care conversations that we're having, the legal ramifications, and making sure that the documents are done right. Someone who does all of those things for you is the type of advisor you want to seek out. One of the best places to find these people are people that you know that are happy with the advisor that they have. And if they say, well, my investment guy is great, well, is that all he does for you? If he does, that's it, then that's not the guy or the gal. What you want is somebody that is a holistic advisor that will look at everything you've got going on, make recommendations in that regard. Some people charge fees for that, others don't. I should say the best place to find them, of course, is Raskin Global. But beyond that, it's recommendations from friends and family that are happy with who they got. And anybody that has concern should reach out and find someone professionally to help. It's just that simple.
And I have no problem with saying they should reach out to you. I mean, you and I have been strategic partners for a long time. I've seen what you've done for your clients and their portfolios and the advice that you've given. And I've also seen you walk away from clients because it's just not a great fit. Give the viewers your contact information and tell them how the best way they can contact you would be.
Sure. So you can find us, as I said, raskinglobal.com. LinkedIn.com/Leonard Raskin or Raskin Global, Facebook.com/Raskin Global. I can be reached Leonard L. Raskin at RaskinGlobal.com. Throw our website up here. Anywhere on there, there's contact us all over the place. Or you can contact Steve. He'll find us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cathy, tell us about the book. October.
Hey, I'm very excited. It's called 12 Conversations, How to Talk to Almost Anyone About Long-Term Care Planning. And as I said, each chapter is someone you should be having a conversation with: your doctor, your lawyer, your financial advisor, your mom, your dad, your spouse, yourself. There's even a chapter on talking to yourself about this important issue and what you have to resolve, both legally, and then it also bends to financially, because those are the two. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a legal advisor, but I know how important these things are that go hand in hand, which just does my heart good that this is what Leonard is all about, because I am trying desperately to always get financial and legal people to work together to do the best for their clients, right? This has to be a joint venture of all of us to do the best for you, to have a plan in place in case you have a crisis at hand. And I see it all the time. So the book will help you make those conversations with your family, your friends, your adult children, and those important people in your life, your professionals. It'll tell you what questions you should be asking. And obviously, if you go to someone like Leonard, he's probably going to answer them before you ask. But if you have other people in your life, these questions will tell you whether they are not really the people who can put this plan together for you. So look forward to that book coming out October 1st of this year.
And how can people buy the book, and how can they reach you?
You can get it on Amazon.com and just look up Cathy Sikorski. That's Cathy with a C. And Sikorski's like a helicopter, except with an I on the end instead of a Y, Sikorski. CathySikorski.com. Hook up with me on LinkedIn. There I am. You can find me on LinkedIn and you can contact me through my website. You just have to laugh because I think everything has a piece of humor in it, even long-term care.
Absolutely. And you know, you do wonders at bringing the humor out in, I mean, just look at the titles of your other two books, and tell the viewing audience about those two books as well. I want to give you a chance, because those books are amazing. I want to make sure that they have the option to buy them as well.
So my first book is a memoir about my first caregiving experience, where my 92-year-old grandmother came to live with me and my 2-year-old, right? And my husband and my dog. That's Showering with Nana: Confessions of a Caregiver, because I have been a caregiver for 8 different family members and friends over the last 30 years. I get this from a practical standpoint as well as my job. And my second book, Who Moved My Teeth, is about what do I do both legally in the first half and what do I do practically in the second half as a caregiver? What are the things I can do to make my life easier?
And anybody who reaches out to me tonight, if you visit our website, actually, that's our old website, theslessgroup.com. It's theslessgroup.com. Reach out to me through the website tonight, and we will send you a copy of Cathy's book on us as soon as it comes out. And we look forward to doing so. My name is Stephen Sless. The name of my company is the Stephen J. Sless Group. We are a division of primary residential mortgage. We help our clients to navigate retirement by using what is in most cases their largest asset, their home equity. And we teach them, with the help of folks like Leonard and Cathy and others that have been on this show in the past, we help them by educating them on the right ways to use housing wealth. And over the years, reverse mortgages have gotten a bad rap. It is a product that has come 180 degrees. It has changed drastically over the years to become the financial tool that it is today. It is the most versatile type of mortgage loan on the market. There's been a lot of consumer protections that have come out over the past few years, a lot of government safeguards. Not only is it one of the best financial resources for you to use in retirement, but it's also among, and I would say, the safest type of mortgage loan on the market today. We can be reached at, again, theslessgroup.com, or pick up the phone and give us a call. Our number is 410-814-7575. Again, that's 410-814-7575. I am so grateful for tonight's guests, Cathy Sikorski, Leonard Raskin. Thank you both so much for being here. And until next time, expect more with Sless. Good night, everybody.